the lesson proper then. As I said, we're actually going to skip over my 13.1, the preferred method, and start with the alternate method. The reason for this is actually we kind of build on some of the logic that's involved here as we go to the preferred method. I probably should have had them in the other order, but in the end, you can choose which method you want, but I think there's some good reasons to go with my preferred method. But in any case, if you bring up the copy paste file here for the 13.2, you'll see after my initial comments, this is what I refer to as the give it all to me approach, right? We're going to bring all the data for all the lookups onto one index view, right? Now, why is this helpful or a step in the right direction? Well, I might as well get started in Visual Studio first of all, and I'll maybe begin by showing you what I mean. So I'm going to add the controllers. I didn't have them yet, so I'm going to add them right now, one at a time, for each of the actual lookup entities, right? So maybe I'll start with medical trial next, medical trial, right? Make sure, okay, follow our new approach of not using plural names, right? For the controllers, use the singular form of the name. That works better when we want to pull out the name of the controller and use it to reference to the entity itself. So I don't need you to sit here and watch this spin its wheels, but actually I'm going to pause until I get all four of them in place. It's the same process, so why make you watch me repeat this? Okay, so I have all four of the controllers open here, and the only change I've made is I made each of them a cognizant controller so we can take advantage of some of the smarts we've added to that overall approach. All right, now, you know what? I'm going to just quickly get this up and running and show you the kind of issue that I'm talking about. I did put links to each of these controllers also on the layout page, so the final thing, look at how crowded this is getting up here, right? But it's really kind of frustrating to the end user. They come here, all right, it's one word, right? To go in and edit this one word and go back to the list and so on. Details of one word, come on, it's kind of overkill having a totally separate controller, having to come to each of these and so on and so forth. So that's what we're going to actually try and get around with our better approach here. So as I said, our second approach, the show it all, give it all to me approach, basically is going to create a new controller altogether. I'm going to add that now. It's going to be an empty. First time I'm selected MVC controller empty, right? I'm just going to call it lookup controller. So don't take out the word controller. I added a one there I don't want. So just don't use plural. It'll be my lookup controller. All right. Now we are going to want to talk the database. So let's add that into the constructor here, pulling from our dependency injection that I can get the medical office context in place. Okay, so what are we going to do here? Well, fitting the theme of give it all to me, we're just going to create a whole bunch of link queries here, pulling the data for all of our lookups into select lists, right? So we'll add those into view data. So there's no actual model for this index view, but we'll put all the data we need into view data here. So each one is just a select list, right? Because we use drop-down lists. Well, basically we will. You'll see there's going to be a twist on that, right? And of course, with any select list, make sure it's in alphabetical order, right? Always much preferred to have that in place, to have things listed alphabetically when you're looking at a whole list of items, right? Just set up properly with the primary keys as the value and so on and so forth. Okay, so that's good. So that gives us our index. Now we need a view to go along with this. Because we started with an empty controller, if you look carefully, you'll see that there's not even a folder under views to correspond, but that will be fixed as soon as we do this. I can just right click on the word index and say add view, right? And then, okay, razor view, and it's going to say, all right, do you want an index? Yeah, that makes sense. But make sure it's, in case it is, make sure it does not have this checkbox for partial view. We want to use the layout page. Yes. All right, this shouldn't take too much longer. There we go. All right, so here's our new blank index view, right? I could worry about the title up here, but we'll take care of that later on. But let's focus on the actual lookups themselves here, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put, just got an H2 up here, lookup values. And then we're just taking advantage of the good old grid system that Bootstrap offers, right? We have a row here. Now, this is maybe the first time you've seen we can have multiple column designations. So basically, if it's on a medium or larger screen, we're going to give to this particular cell, okay, in the row, 4 out of the 12, right? In other words, 1/3 of the available width, right? But if we get below a medium, as long as we're above small, right, then we're going to give it 6 out of the 12. In other words, we'll have 2 cells per row on a small screen, but if we get up to a medium or above, there'll be 3, right? 4 fits into 12 3 times. So it'll be 3 cells per row before we start repeating the next row. And that's all we're doing. We're just throwing this same similar code into each cell of our Bootstrap grid. Now let's look at what's in each cell, right? Well, we have an H4 at the top. Notice we've given it an ID. We don't normally bother with that, but that means that in client-side JavaScript, I can pull out the inner HTML, right, contained inside this div. I can identify it by the ID. Okay. And then we see our drop-down list, right? Whichever one you want to look at doesn't matter to me. Okay, so specialty ID here, okay, that's the actual select list that we built in the controller and passed down to this view. What you'll notice is different from the drop-down list we've done before is this size attribute, right? We're going to send this HTML attribute down, size equals 6. Well, you might not have done this before, but a drop-down list is still a drop-down list. But if you set the size above 1, it sure looks like a list box, right? The thing is, you can only ever select one item in the list, right? In any drop-down list, and this will work the same way. So it means that although we're showing 6 choices at a time, and you can scroll up and down and see all of them, right? You can only ever choose one, and that's exactly what we want. Okay, so those are our drop-down lists, right? And of course, they have the same name as the actual select list itself. Now let's talk about these links. Familiar with this? This is a normal arrangement of create, edit, and delete links. Create is fine because actually it doesn't matter which one of these we click on. See, it has the controller name and then it has the actual action, create. And if you remember our routing, okay, our default route, that's all it needs for a create. Okay, you have the controller, the view, the action, right, is create, and then that's it. There's nothing else required. However, edit and delete, we require after the end of the action slash and then an integer value, right, an ID to indicate the primary key of the one we want to actually work with. That's the default arrangement for our routes, right? Well, here's the tricky part. Create works just fine because we don't have to pass anything. But if they've chosen one of the specialties, right, showing inside this list, and they click the edit link, how do we pass that final bit of information, the ID, the actual primary key value of the selected specialty? How do we pass that to the edit or to the delete, right? Well, we'll have to actually do that with some client-side script, right? And that's why you'll see here class, link click, okay, as a class in all of our edit and delete links, right? Because classes is something we can grab onto with JavaScript, just like we can grab onto IDs, and then we can pull information out of the HTML of the page. So I didn't copy in the JavaScript yet. We'll do that now. Now remember how this works. If we add a section with the name scripts, it automatically is inserted, okay, in our layout page right at the very bottom of the page, right? We've done that before. So here's my little bit of text JavaScript, okay? Now notice the period here. You might remember from, working with JavaScript before, the period refers to a class, whereas when we use a pound sign, it refers to an ID, right? So what we're saying is, hey, anything that has the class link click, if we click it, right, then we'll call this function, this event handler, right? First thing we do, prevent default. That actually prevents the actual default action of clicking on the link. So it doesn't navigate off the page, right? We said, no, don't do that. We're in charge. We're going to handle the situation. So what happens next? Well, we go to the href, okay? That's actually the href of the link that was clicked, okay? This is the link that was clicked. So we grab that, and what that basically contains is slash the controller name slash the action, right? Perfect, okay? Then we split that because all we want is a controller name, and I'm storing that in what I'm calling here lookup. that'll be the name of the controller, which by coincidence, okay, is also the name of the drop-down list if we add ID at the end, right? So that's what I do next. I take that name, the controller name, stick ID at the end. The pound sign, of course, means that we're going to find it by that ID, which of course these ones will have. And that means this will evaluate. I can get dot value, and there's my primary key, right? That's the primary key of the selected item in the list that corresponds to the link that was clicked. Now, of course, they might not have had one selected, right? So that's what this next bit is about. I'm going to go pound lookup without the ID at the end. Well, what is that? Well, that's this H4, right? So I can pull the HTML out of there, okay, .html, and I can just use that in my error message, right? That's all I'm doing here. So it's my caption. So if ID is null, I say error, no value selected from the, and I'll use whatever text was there above the drop-down list, right? Medical trials, uh, medical specialties, whatever it shows. Okay, but if we do actually have a value, then how do we actually execute a link in code? Well, we just go window location href, right? We just assign a new href to the browser's window, right? To the location. And so that would be our address, which is the, remember, controller slash action. And then we add another slash and the ID, which we got from the value of the currently selected drop-down list. Okay, that's it. And that will give us our functionality we're after. So what we want to do then in each of these controllers, right, instead of, okay, returning all the data, right, what we're going to do is I'm going to replace this with a different line of code. I just want to redirect back to the lookup index, and that would be in each one, okay? Search and replace won't help me much here because these lines of code are different each one. By the way, it might have scaffolded it as a asynchronous, right? So you might have to change that as well just by removing that. So really I'm going to copy this and just put it in place for the index action of each of these lookup controllers. Now, let me just caution you, this actually works now. uh, remember, throughout the other, the post actions for create, edit, and delete, after saving changes to the database, it always redirects back to index. So it comes here, but here we just redirect them again back to the lookup index. So technically we could just put this, or should put this line of code after save changes in each and every one of the post actions for create, edit, and delete, right? Because there's no point stopping here first. We can just go directly, go directly to jail. Do not pass home or whatever. How's that go? Monopoly, right? Anyway, the point is we shouldn't make an extra stop here. We should be more thorough and do that. But I'm not going to take time right now. There's other things you need to fix up in these controllers eventually too. I'm mainly thinking of what? The fact that our golden rule is anytime you talk to the database, wrap it in a try catch, right? So because these are just scaffolded, none of that code is in place. So make sure you take time. I'm not going to make you watch me do it now, but make sure you take time to go back and wrap every time you save the database in try catch. And don't forget, edit should always be switched to use the try update model approach, as well as, of course, being in a try catch, right? Anyway, but for brevity, this will get the job done for now, right? It's just we aren't finished yet. But let's just see if this actually works now. Okay, problem is I need my lookup. Okay, I didn't add that here yet. Okay, so here we are, lookup. Now let me just show you how with the grid system, see how as we get smaller, we get down below a medium, and now we have 2 per row. When we eventually get down below small, everything goes vertically all together, right? Okay, so that's just using the grid system that we already know and love. Okay, but you see how each of these drop-down lists now looks like a regular list control, but I can only select one. It doesn't matter if I hold control or anything else. Okay, I only can pick one at a time, right? All right, well, let's actually, to help us understand the process of the JavaScript, if you press F12, this works in pretty much all of our major browsers, right? Then here you can click on different things in this tree view. I can come to the actual page, and then you can scroll up and down. And even here, I already had it set already for some reason, but you can set a breakpoint wherever you want, right? So I can set a breakpoint here on my link click, okay? Then here, what I'll do, I've got asthma selected right now. So if I click edit, oh, for some reason it didn't. Why not? Let me go back to the list. Pick a different one. Okay. All right. So I stopped here, right? So we're in this event handler now, right? Notice we got all these nice tools over here as well to look at locals and so on and so forth. And up here is my little debug toolbar so I can step over next function call, right? So remember, prevent default actually prevented the link from actually navigating off the page. Now I come to the href and I examine that. Okay, so I pull out the address. You can see there is specialty/edit, right? Even shows it up here, address and so on. I can keep on going. So now I split that. So lookup is just the actual controller name. Okay, splitting it with a delimiter of our /. So I just take the first one after I divide it up into a collection that way. Then I'm going to take that concatenate ID on the end, right? Put a # in front, and that basically is the ID of the drop-down list. So I just get the value from it. And there we go. So the ID is 2. That is the actual primary key over here of addiction psychiatry, right? Okay, so now I have everything I really need. Now the caption, this will just be the actual text that's contained inside that H4 heading right above the drop-down list, right? I can use that if I need to down here in my error message. Now, ID has a value, so I'm not going to go into the first branch of the if. I'll jump down to the else. So here's where it's actually going to navigate away, right, to my window location href to the controller/action/ID and bada bing. So I'm over here and you can see it up there, specialty edit 2. It worked, right? Now, if I could change it, I could save that. And we came back to here because in my code in the controller, it first sent me back to the index of that controller, but that redirected me back to the lookup, right? Okay, so it's functioning. Now, let me just show you if I click one of these without having anything selected, right? We come in here again. I can step through. Yep, yep, yep. There's my caption. Ooh, but my value C is still null because nothing was selected, right? So I'll come into the first part branch of the if structure and show my error message. And there it is. Error, no value selected in the medical trials list. There you go. So, you know, it's pretty straightforward stuff, the JavaScript in many cases, but it's getting the job done. Now, what I could do, I don't need 4 separate links up here now. All I need is one. So let me just make that final change, right? I'll come down here in views to shared, go to the layout. Okay, so I added all those separately. Oh, all that work I did for nothing. And I'll just pick one of them, change that to lookup. And maybe I'll change this, maintain lookup values, right? And then these ones I can just get rid of. Don't need them at all. There we go. So that's basically it. Although, as I said, you really should go back, take the time into each of those lookup controllers, change the command to go back to the index to go to the lookup index, just testing that it actually works again. There we are, annual checkup back here, and away we go, right? As well as put the proper try catches around every time you go to save to the database. Okay, now, one thing, it was actually working, even though I have a cognizant controller, right? Uh, I meant to point this out and I forgot, so I'm just going to run it one last time here. If I come to one of those, notice it just says back to list. It's just going back to the actual condition index. Fortunately, yes, that does. It's like a safety net, a catch-all that will send us back to the lookup, but we're not really properly implementing the good code that we've done so far. So we've made it a cognizant controller. So one of the things I would probably want to do is I would want to replace each and every one of those um, back to list links, just like we did earlier, right? Remember, we just talked about this in our last discussion, right? We want to replace all of them with this partial. So I'm going to copy that first. And if I highlight this, or I can go to one of them, pick one, anyone, as long as it's from one of the lookups. I can replace that. I just highlight it, go Control H, gives me my find and replace. Replace with my partial name, all open, no, not just open documents, but the whole project, thank you. And there we go, 16, because there was 4 in each of those 4 new sets of views, right? So now at least it will show a proper back to list. Okay, using the controller name. And you know what? It's going to get even better when we get to the next part. Trust me. Just checking though. Back to condition list, right? Oh, okay. Oh, that's because it says condition. Oh, well, we'll get that fixed in the next part. Don't worry. All right. So that's good for the alternate version. Now we're going to go on to the preferred version.